Queen Lyra of Luminara gazed across the vast courtyard of her palace. The sun's soft light reflected off the crystal towers, casting rainbows across the marble floors. The citizens were gathered in excitement. Today was the day their queen would meet her new husband, a human ambassador named Ethan. Lyra had read reports about humans before. They were said to be clever, adaptable, and curious, but most importantly, they were unpredictable. She had hoped for a quiet diplomat, someone to share her life, not someone who might disrupt her carefully organized world. As the ceremonial gates opened, Lyra saw Ethan for the first time. He was plain-looking, with simple clothes and an easy smile. There was no sign of arrogance or grandeur. He carried himself with quiet confidence. To anyone else, he might have seemed ordinary, just another visitor. But something in his eyes hinted at curiosity and intelligence. Lyra approached him, her flowing robes brushing the polished floors. "Welcome to Luminara," she said in her soft, melodic voice. "I hope your journey was comfortable." Ethan bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. The journey was fascinating. Your planet is beautiful." Lyra smiled politely, observing him closely. He was humble, yes, but he did not seem overwhelmed by the grandeur of her palace. Most guests were awed or intimidated, but not him. That was unusual. The ceremony began with the usual formalities: songs sung by the crystal choirs, dancers performing intricate steps, and alien officials presenting gifts. Everything was perfect, yet Lyra noticed Ethan's eyes wandering, not in disrespect but in curiosity. He examined the mechanical ornaments, the energy patterns in the light fountains, and the devices powering the palace. Finally, it was time for the formal greeting ritual. The court expected a careful, cautious human who would follow instructions exactly, but as Ethan stepped forward, a small alarm sounded somewhere in the palace. One of the energy conduits responsible for powering the light fountains had begun to flicker. The fountains sputtered, light scattering unpredictably. The audience gasped. Lyra's advisors froze, unsure how to fix it. The palace technicians ran toward the conduits, fiddling with panels and wires, but their attempts only made the lights blink faster. Ethan tilted his head, observing. He walked calmly to the nearest control panel. "May I?" he asked politely. Lyra raised an eyebrow but nodded. He crouched, pressing buttons in a sequence that seemed almost random. Then he pulled a small human tool from his satchel, a strange device the aliens had never seen before. With it, he tapped a few circuits. The fountain stabilized. The water arched perfectly, catching the sunlight in sparkling colors once more. The court fell silent, then erupted in applause. Even the technicians looked astonished. Lyra's heart skipped. She had expected a human to be timid and careful. Instead, this man had solved a problem they had struggled with for hours. Yet he did not boast. He simply smiled and said, "Happy to help." Later, during the formal dinner, Lyra studied him over the elegant feast. He asked questions, not trivial ones, but thoughtful inquiries about her people, her planet, and the technologies they used. He was humble, yes, but curious, intelligent, and remarkably perceptive. Lyra thought to herself, "He is not what I expected." Perhaps I judged him too quickly. The palace evening continued with music and dancing. Lyra led Ethan through the dances of her people, and though he stumbled a few times, he laughed at himself. His laughter was infectious, lightening the mood of the entire court. The alien nobles, who often acted with strict formality, found themselves smiling and chatting with one another, drawn into the human's charm. As the night grew late, Lyra led Ethan to the palace balcony. The twin moons of Luminara hung low in the sky, casting soft blue light across the gardens below. "You seem different from what I expected," Lyra said. Her voice was softer now, almost curious. "Most humans I have read about are cautious around royalty. You seem fearless," Ethan chuckled quietly. "Fearless? No, not exactly. I just like to understand things. Sometimes understanding helps more than fear." Lyra studied him, sensing there was more behind his words than he revealed. She had dealt with diplomats, politicians, and scholars from across the galaxy. She knew when someone hid true potential behind modesty, and she had the feeling Ethan was exactly that type of person. The next morning, the Queen accompanied Ethan on a tour of Luminara's most important sites: the floating gardens, the crystal library, and the Hall of Knowledge. Everywhere they went, citizens greeted him with curiosity and warmth. Unlike many humans, he did not treat the attention as a burden. He smiled, shook hands, and asked questions about their customs. At the Crystal Library, a small emergency occurred. One of the floating archive platforms began to wobble dangerously, threatening to drop priceless records. The librarians panicked, unsure how to stop it. Ethan, however, stepped forward. Using a combination of clever leverage and timing, he stabilized the platform. The records were safe. Lyra watched quietly, heart pounding. Every act of calm intelligence surprised her. Her expectation of a humble, almost passive husband was crumbling. This man, seemingly ordinary, had a quiet strength and capability that she had never imagined. Later, back at the palace, Lyra asked him a question she had been wondering since the first day. "Do you always solve problems like this?" Ethan smiled, slightly embarrassed. "I don't know. I just try to help. I notice things, think about solutions, and act. I don't see it as extraordinary." Lyra shook her head, smiling. "You make it seem ordinary, but you are not. Perhaps I misjudged humans entirely." Ethan looked at her curiously. "Judged humans? You assumed all humans were the same," she said. "I assumed you would be cautious, careful, and predictable. But you are none of these things. You are clever, observant, and courageous in your way. I did not expect this from someone so humble." Ethan laughed softly. "I am not all-knowing. I make mistakes. But I do my best. And sometimes best is enough." The Queen looked at him thoughtfully. She felt a warmth she had never felt for anyone else. It was respect, admiration, and curiosity all at once. She wanted to know more about this human who seemed so ordinary, yet acted with extraordinary insight. That evening, Lyra attended a private council meeting with her advisors. They spoke of diplomacy, trade, and upcoming alliances. Throughout the discussion, Ethan quietly observed, offering suggestions that were simple but effective. The advisors were amazed. Ideas they had debated for weeks were summarized in a single sentence by the human, and solutions became clear. Lyra watched him, feeling a mixture of surprise and pride. Perhaps, she thought, humility is not weakness. Perhaps there is strength in observation, patience, and cleverness that I have underestimated. As the palace lights dimmed and the twin moons shone brightly over the city, Lyra realized that her life was about to change in ways she had not anticipated. The man she thought she understood, quiet, simple, and humble, was far more capable than she had imagined. And deep down she knew she wanted to witness more of his actions, to understand the depth of his character. Little did she know, the events she had seen so far were only the beginning. This human had a way of turning ordinary moments into extraordinary solutions. And soon, Queen Lyra would see him in situations that would challenge her understanding of courage, intelligence, and partnership in ways she never imagined. For now, though they stood together on the balcony, looking out at a peaceful world, Lyra smiled softly. Perhaps, she thought, the universe had sent her the perfect companion, not a ruler, not a hero, but someone who could quietly change the world in ways no one expected. The morning sun bathed the palace of Luminara in a soft golden light. Queen Lyra had barely finished her morning ritual when a messenger arrived with urgent news. The palace's energy network, which powered the floating gardens and communication systems, was experiencing minor fluctuations. While the situation wasn't immediately dangerous, it had caused confusion among the palace staff. Lyra sighed and called Ethan. "It seems your first day of true palace life has begun," she said with a wry smile. Ethan stood, brushing crumbs from his tunic. "I am ready. What seems to be the problem?" A technician hurried forward. "Your Majesty, the energy conduits are misaligned. We cannot stabilize the floating gardens lift systems, and several communications hubs are offline." Lyra turned to Ethan, curious to see what he would do. He walked calmly toward the main control chamber, studying the panels and wires. Unlike the technicians who were panicking slightly, Ethan's face showed calm focus. He tilted his head, examining the readings. "Have you tried this?" he asked, pointing to a small sequence of overrides on a panel the technicians hadn't touched. The technicians glanced at each other. "That hasn't been attempted. It is unconventional." Ethan smiled politely. "Sometimes unconventional methods work best. He adjusted the sequence and then inserted his small human tool into a port. Lights flickered briefly, then steadied. The floating gardens hummed back to life, rising gracefully into the sky. Communication channels buzzed to life. The technicians gasped in amazement. Queen Lyra's eyes widened. "You did it again," she whispered. Ethan shrugged. "It's nothing special. Just observing, thinking, and acting." Throughout the day, Ethan accompanied Lyra to various parts of the palace and city. He asked questions not just for information, but to understand deeper patterns: how energy systems worked, how citizens interacted with technology, and how the palace maintained harmony. At the Academy of Knowledge, a group of scholars struggled to decode a newly discovered artifact from a neighboring planet. The artifact had glowing symbols that the scholars could not interpret. Ethan examined it closely, tilting it under the light, turning it, and asking questions about the materials. After a moment, he traced the patterns with his fingers and murmured, "It's a map of energy currents. The symbols indicate flow directions, not language." The scholars blinked. None had seen it that way. With Ethan's guidance, they reconfigured the artifact's display, revealing complex but understandable data about the planet's energy network. Lyra watched quietly from the side, feeling a mixture of pride and amazement. "You are extraordinary," she whispered later, as they walked through the crystal hallways. "I thought humans were clever, yes, but I did not expect you to see solutions that even our scholars miss." Ethan shook his head. "I just try to notice things. I see what others overlook. That is all." But Lyra saw more than he realized. His humility was not weakness, it was a strength. It allowed him to observe freely, act without ego, and adapt quickly. She could feel her respect for him growing with every moment. The day was not over. Later, a festival began in the central square to honor the newly allied worlds. Lanterns floated in the sky, music filled the air, and citizens from multiple planets gathered. The floating platforms, where performers danced and displayed light patterns, suddenly began to wobble. Technicians rushed forward, but their attempts only worsened the situation. The platforms shook dangerously, threatening to ruin the festival. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Ethan stepped forward calmly. "We need to counterbalance the weight while stabilizing the lift currents," he said. "Can someone hand me a few support rods?" With his guidance, the technicians followed simple instructions, adjusting weights and currents. Within minutes, the platform stabilized, lights dancing perfectly once again. The crowd erupted in applause. Lyra's heart swelled. She had expected a quiet, humble man, not someone who could solve complex problems so effortlessly yet without arrogance. He didn't seek glory, yet he commanded respect through action alone. After the festival, Lyra invited Ethan to the palace gardens. They walked through rows of glowing plants which hummed softly with life. "Tell me," she asked, "do you ever tire of solving problems? Or do you enjoy it?" Ethan paused, looking at a luminous flower. "I don't know if I enjoy it," he said slowly. "I like understanding things. I like helping when I can. Maybe that is enjoyment." Lyra smiled softly. "It is rare to find someone who does not seek praise but still achieves greatness. You have a rare mind, Ethan. I can see that now." Ethan laughed quietly, shaking his head. "I don't know about rare. Humans can be clever. It's just, sometimes we look at things differently." Lyra studied him. "You are more than clever. You are insightful, adaptable, and remarkable in ways even your kind may not understand." Days passed, and Ethan's reputation grew quietly within the palace. Even neighboring dignitaries, who initially saw him as a minor human diplomat, began to notice his skill. During a council meeting discussing trade agreements, a problem arose involving conflicting energy standards between two planets. Alien diplomats debated endlessly, unable to find a compromise. Ethan raised his hand. "Perhaps instead of adjusting the systems on each planet, we could standardize the transmission method on one central hub, letting each planet adapt locally. That way no system has to change entirely." The room went silent. Then one by one nods appeared. The compromise worked, saving time, energy, and resources. Lyra watched, silently amazed. She had expected diplomacy to be difficult, yet this human had solved what her advisors had debated for weeks. That evening, as they dined privately, Lyra spoke again. "You make everything look so simple, Ethan. I expected my husband to be cautious, careful, and predictable. You are none of those things." Ethan smiled. I never wanted to be anything other than helpful. I suppose simplicity works best sometimes. Lyra laughed quietly. Perhaps simplicity is the key, but it is not easy to remain humble while being so effective. How do you do it? Ethan shrugged. I focus on understanding, not impressing. I notice patterns, think of solutions, and act. Nothing more, nothing less. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. She realized that his humility was not ignorance, it was strength. His calm, quiet way of observing and acting made him different from any other being she had met. In a way, he reminded her of the human stories she had read. Ordinary people achieving extraordinary things through ingenuity, courage, and care. Over the next week, Ethan continued to prove himself. A small delegation from a distant planet arrived with a mechanical device meant to display their culture's history. The device had a flaw in its projection system, and the delegates feared it would fail entirely. Ethan examined it, asked simple questions about the mechanics, and then made a few minor adjustments. Suddenly, the projections came alive, vivid and stunning. The aliens were amazed. They whispered among themselves, saying, "The human sees what we cannot. He brings solutions without arrogance." Queen Lyra observed quietly, feeling pride in a way she had never expected. She had married a humble man expecting simplicity but had found brilliance. She began to realize that strength did not always roar or demand attention. Sometimes it quietly worked behind the scenes, guiding events, solving problems, and inspiring respect. By the end of the week, the palace had begun to see a subtle change. The staff, once nervous and cautious, began to approach Ethan with trust. Citizens admired him quietly, and foreign dignitaries regarded him with curiosity and respect. He was no longer just a human ambassador, he was a problem solver, a guide, and quietly, a hero in their eyes. That night, Lyra and Ethan stood on the balcony, watching the twin moons rise. The city below sparkled with life and harmony, floating gardens hovering gracefully. Lyra felt a deep admiration and curiosity for the human beside her. "You have changed things in ways I did not expect," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "I only do what I can. I notice, I help. That is all." Lyra shook her head, smiling. "It is never all, you have a gift. You make even the complex seem simple, and you do it without ego, without seeking praise. That is rare." Ethan looked at her quietly. "Perhaps that is what humans do best. We adapt. We notice, we try. Nothing more." Lyra laughed softly. She realized that her expectations, her assumptions about humans and even about her husband had been entirely wrong, but she was grateful for it. This human, humble yet brilliant, would soon reveal even more of his talents, and she would be there to witness them, learning that true greatness often came in quiet, unexpected forms. The city of Luminara awoke to a sky painted with soft pinks and golds, the twin moons fading in the early dawn. Queen Lyra stood on her balcony watching the city stretch and move with life. Floating gardens drifted lazily above the streets. Citizens walked calmly and the humming of energy systems filled the air. She had thought life would return to a predictable rhythm, but with Ethan in the palace, nothing remained ordinary for long. "Your Majesty?" A messenger called urgently. Bowing low, "There is a problem in the outer districts. The energy network has experienced a major disruption, and communication with several neighborhoods is offline." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "How severe?" The messenger hesitated. "It seems the storm last night, though minor, caused unexpected interference in the grid. Some residents are trapped in their homes and certain platforms in the floating gardens are unstable." Lyra turned to Ethan, who was calmly inspecting a small device in his hands. "Your turn, I suppose," she said with a faint smile. Ethan nodded. "Let's see what we can do." The palace vehicles sped toward the affected districts, gliding silently above the city. As they approached, Lyra could see the chaos below. Floating platforms wobbled, some tilting dangerously, while citizens looked up anxiously, unsure how to stabilize them. The energy network's hum was uneven, causing lights to flicker. Technicians rushed in from all directions, trying to manage the situation. But every adjustment seemed to create a new problem. Lyra could feel the tension building among her staff. They were skilled, yes, but they lacked a solution that could handle the complexity of the storm's effect. Ethan stepped forward, studying the patterns of the unstable energy currents. His eyes scanned the conduits, observing the fluctuations and the interactions between systems. "The problem isn't the power source," he said quietly. It's the flow. The currents are bouncing off each other in unexpected ways. If we redirect a portion and stabilize it gradually, the rest will follow naturally. A technician raised an eyebrow. That is unconventional. Ethan smiled faintly. Sometimes unconventional works best. He moved to a control panel and began adjusting sequences, timing each change with precision. His hands moved quickly yet carefully as he inserted a small human tool into a port, tapping circuits in a sequence no alien had tried before. Slowly, the platform stabilized, rising smoothly into the air, their energy humming in perfect harmony. Lyra watched, heart pounding. Citizens cheered, grateful and relieved. The technicians stared in amazement, whispering among themselves about the human who had fixed what they could not. "It is incredible," Lyra said quietly. "You remain calm when everything is in chaos." Ethan shrugged. "I try to notice the patterns first, then act. Panic never solves anything." As the city regained balance, Lyra noticed a small boy waving up at her from one of the floating platforms. Ethan caught her gaze and smiled. "See?" he said. "A little help goes a long way. People just need guidance sometimes." Lyra felt a mixture of pride and awe. Her husband, whom she had thought ordinary, was quietly heroic. Not through force or commands, but through observation, ingenuity, and action. Later that day, Lyra led Ethan to a council meeting with ambassadors from neighboring planets. A dispute had arisen between two worlds over the use of a shared energy source. Both claimed it was vital for their citizens, and neither was willing to compromise. Alien diplomats argued fiercely, presenting technical data, history, and complex theories, yet no solution seemed acceptable. Lyra glanced at Ethan, curious to see how he would handle the situation. He listened quietly, asking questions that seemed simple at first. If each planet maintains its local system but connects to a central hub for distribution, would that satisfy both parties? He asked. The room went silent. The solution was straightforward, yet no one had considered it. One by one, heads nodded. The ambassadors smiled, realizing that a compromise could indeed work without sacrificing resources. Lyra's eyes widened. Once again, Ethan had solved a problem that had stumped experts for weeks. That evening, as the palace settled into calm, Lyra invited Ethan for a walk in the Crystal Gardens. The air was fragrant with alien flowers, their glow soft and soothing. "Do you ever tire of solving problems?" she asked. "Or is it simply what you do?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I do not think of it as solving problems. I see what is happening. I notice what can be improved and I try to help. It is not tiring because it feels natural." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "You make it seem so simple. But what you do is extraordinary. Humility is rare, but humility combined with brilliance is even rarer." Ethan shook his head. "I do not think of it as brilliance. I only notice, think, and act. That is all." Lyra realized that his simplicity was his strength. His modesty allowed him to act freely without ego or pressure. He could see solutions where others only saw confusion. And in that moment, she felt a deep respect, an admiration she had never felt for anyone else. The next day brought another challenge. The Luminara City Council had planned a cultural exchange festival with neighboring worlds. A new interactive display had been installed. A massive holographic map meant to show trade routes, communication lines, and energy networks. But during setup, the display malfunctioned. Cities and platforms appeared distorted, some floating in midair while energy lines blinked in confusing patterns. The technicians struggled to fix it, their alien tools and methods failing. The festival was to begin in a few hours and the guests were arriving. Lyra felt a familiar tension rising. She turned to Ethan. "You know what to do," she said. Ethan studied the holographic map carefully. "The problem is not the display itself," he said. "It's the sequence of the data input. Some nodes were connected incorrectly. If we adjust the source data, the display will align naturally." With calm precision, he tapped panels, adjusted sequences, and coordinated the technicians. Within minutes, the holographic display glowed perfectly, showing clear paths, networks, and routes. The festival could proceed without a hitch. Lyra watched the guests arrive, smiling and impressed by the flawless setup. She turned to Ethan, a mixture of admiration and curiosity in her eyes. "You are remarkable. Every day I see something new about you. Every day I understand that strength does not always roar. It can be quiet, patient, and clever." Ethan looked at her, his expression soft. "I am just trying to help, Lyra. That is all I ever wanted." But she knew it was more than that. His quiet actions had inspired her people, gained respect from alien dignitaries, and transformed the palace staff. He had done all of this without seeking recognition, without claiming glory. His humility was not weakness. It was power. As the festival continued into the evening, Lyra noticed small acts of kindness everywhere. Citizens smiled at Ethan as he walked by. Children waved, and even the alien technicians approached him with trust and admiration. He had become a symbol, not of authority but of guidance and clever action. That night, as the twin moons rose again, Lyra and Ethan walked through the palace gardens in silence. The glow of alien flowers lit their path. Lyra finally spoke. "You have changed my understanding of humans, of strength, and of partnership. I thought I married a humble man, but you are so much more than that." Ethan smiled faintly. "I am still humble, I just notice, act, and try. That is all I can do." Lyra shook her head. "It is never all. You make extraordinary things appear ordinary, and that is rare indeed. I want to see more. I want to understand all the ways your mind works." Ethan glanced at her, a mixture of amusement and quiet pride in his eyes. "Then you will see. There is more than what you have witnessed so far. But it will take time." Lyra smiled softly. She felt a warmth in her chest, a deep admiration that went beyond respect. It was curiosity, fascination, and even affection. She realized that the man she had thought she understood, humble, ordinary, and unremarkable, was revealing hidden depths every day. And those depths were extraordinary. The city below slept peacefully, unaware of the quiet hero who walked among them. Ethan did not seek glory, but his actions had already transformed Luminara. Citizens, technicians, and alien dignitaries alike had begun to notice the human who quietly solved problems, inspired respect, and guided others without command. Lyra looked at him one last time that night, under the twin moons. "I think I understand now," she whispered. "Humility and brilliance can coexist, and in you they do so perfectly. Perhaps the universe has a way of showing greatness through the simplest of people." Ethan smiled softly. "Then let us see what comes next. There is still much to learn and much to do." The twin suns of Luminara rose slowly over the crystal towers, casting long golden shadows across the city. Queen Lyra sat in her council chamber, reviewing reports from distant worlds. Luminara's reputation as a center of learning and harmony had grown, thanks largely to the clever human she had married. Ethan had become known not only within the palace but across multiple neighboring planets. His ingenuity, humility, and calm problem-solving had captured attention far beyond the city. This morning, a message arrived from the Galactic Council, a body of leaders representing dozens of advanced civilizations. They were requesting a demonstration of Luminara's technological solutions, especially the ones designed and improved by Ethan. The council wanted to see how a human could solve complex problems that had stumped some of the galaxy's most brilliant minds. Lyra raised an eyebrow as she read the message aloud. They want him to showcase his solutions. "To the galaxy," Ethan shrugged lightly. "I only do what I can. If it helps others, I will participate." Lyra smiled. "You make it sound so simple. But they will see what I have already noticed, your intelligence, your calm, and your insight. You will inspire more than just admiration." The preparations began immediately. Delegates from dozens of planets arrived in the palace courtyard, their ships gliding silently above the floating gardens. They carried devices, artifacts, and complex technologies from their worlds, each hoping to impress or challenge Luminara's renowned systems. The first demonstration involved a communication network shared between 3 planets. The system had been prone to delays, glitches, and data loss. Even the best technicians from the council had failed to fully stabilize it. Ethan approached the main control console, observing the network carefully. He noted the sequence of signals, the energy flow, and the timing of transmissions. Then he spoke quietly, giving precise instructions to the Luminara technicians and the visiting engineers. Within minutes, the network stabilized perfectly. Messages transmitted instantly, visuals displayed without error, and data flowed smoothly. The delegates gasped in astonishment. One alien scholar whispered to another, "This human sees the patterns that elude even our brightest minds." Lyra watched Ethan from a balcony above, a mixture of pride and awe in her chest. She had thought she understood his abilities, but every new situation revealed another layer of brilliance. His quiet, unassuming presence had already become legendary among her people, and now the galaxy would witness it too. Next came a challenge posed by a visiting planet known for its advanced energy systems. They presented a device meant to convert environmental energy into usable power for multiple planets. The device was unstable, producing bursts of energy that could damage equipment if not carefully managed. The alien engineers had spent weeks attempting to stabilize it. Ethan studied the device, asking questions about the principles behind it and the materials used. Then, using a combination of human tools and Luminara's technology, he adjusted the energy flow in a subtle but precise way. The device began to function perfectly. Energy flowed smoothly to all intended targets without glitches or bursts. The alien engineers exchanged stunned looks, murmuring words of amazement. Lyra smiled, feeling her admiration deepen. She had known humans were capable of ingenuity, but Ethan embodied it in a way that went beyond theory or calculation. He combined observation, intuition, and careful action, producing results that seemed almost effortless. During the afternoon, Ethan continued to assist with other demonstrations. A transport system linking multiple floating platforms, a holographic map showing trade routes across 5 planets, and even a small disaster simulation designed to test problem-solving under pressure. Each time he observed, analyzed, and acted calmly. His solutions were elegant and effective, leaving both the Luminara technicians and the visiting delegates amazed. One of the council leaders, a tall alien with translucent skin, approached Lyra. "Your human, he is extraordinary. I have never seen such insight in one so unassuming." Lyra nodded. "I have seen it every day. He does not seek recognition, yet his actions inspire respect and admiration. He changes not only systems but people." The alien tilted its head. "He demonstrates what we have long suspected. Humility and brilliance can coexist. Perhaps humans have qualities we underestimate." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. She had married this human expecting humility. Instead, she had found quiet heroism, insight, and a mind capable of inspiring entire civilizations. That evening, as the sun set and the twin moons rose, the palace hosted a grand banquet for the visiting dignitaries. Lanterns floated in the sky, casting soft light across the tables. Ethan moved among the guests, answering questions, offering simple but profound insights and listening attentively to their stories. Lyra watched him, noting the subtle way he commanded respect without demanding it. He did not dominate conversations, yet his presence drew attention. Delegates sought his opinion, technicians deferred to his suggestions, and even other leaders seemed to pause and consider his words carefully. During a quiet moment, Lyra approached him. "You have changed their perception of humans," she said softly. "They came expecting a simple ambassador and found a mind capable of solving problems they could not." Ethan smiled faintly. "I only try to understand and help. I do not seek to impress. If others learn from what I do, that is enough." Lyra shook her head, smiling. "It is never enough because what you do is extraordinary. You inspire, guide, and teach without effort. That is true greatness." As the banquet continued, a small incident occurred. One of the alien dignitaries accidentally triggered a minor malfunction in the lighting system. The lanterns flickered and swayed, creating an uneven display. Many guests froze, unsure how to respond. Ethan stepped forward, observing the pattern of failures. With a few subtle adjustments, he stabilized the system. The lanterns glowed steadily and the guests erupted in applause. Lyra caught her breath. Even in minor situations, he found solutions calmly and efficiently. She realized that his brilliance was not limited to grand challenges. It extended to every situation, no matter how small. Later, as the guests retired to their ships and the palace grew quiet, Lyra and Ethan walked through the crystal gardens. The alien flowers glowed softly, their light reflecting in the pools below. "You have changed not only my kingdom but the perception of humans across multiple worlds," Lyra said. "I thought I married a humble man, someone ordinary, but you are far more than I imagined." Ethan glanced at her, eyes calm and thoughtful. "I am still humble, Lyra. I only act when I see what needs to be done." "That is all," Lyra smiled softly. "It is never all. Your quiet brilliance changes lives, inspires respect, and brings harmony where there was uncertainty. You are extraordinary in ways even you do not realize." Ethan looked at the glowing flowers, then back at her, I do not seek recognition. I only hope to help and understand. That is enough for me." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling a warmth and admiration she had never felt before. She realized that true strength did not roar or demand attention. It acted quietly, thoughtfully, and effectively, and in Ethan she saw the perfect example of that strength. The next day brought even more attention. Reports of Ethan's demonstrations had spread throughout nearby planets. Delegations requested private consultations, scholars sought his advice, and citizens shared stories of the human who quietly solved problems, inspired innovation, and guided with calm authority. Lyra watched him interact with visitors, noticing the subtle way he taught by example. He did not lecture or dictate. Instead, he observed, asked questions, and suggested actions. Others learned quickly, not from his authority, but from his example. By the end of the week, Ethan had transformed Luminara into a hub of learning and cooperation. Citizens, technicians, and visiting dignitaries alike admired him, not for power or titles, but for his quiet intelligence, patience, and humility. That night, Lyra joined him on the palace balcony once more. The twin moons reflected in their eyes, the city below glowing with energy and harmony. "You have done more than I imagined possible," she said softly. "You have shown that humans, humble, unassuming humans, can achieve greatness through observation, understanding, and action." Ethan smiled faintly. "I do what I can. If it helps, then it is enough." Lyra shook her head, smiling. "It is never enough because what you do is extraordinary. You inspire not only me but entire civilizations. You prove that strength comes not from force but from insight, patience, and humility." Ethan looked at her quietly. "Then I am glad to help. That is all I ever wanted." Lyra felt her admiration deepen. She had married a man she thought she understood. Instead, she had found a mind that could inspire galaxies, a heart that guided others without demand, and a humility that made him greater than anyone expected. As the palace lights dimmed and the twin moons shone brightly over the city, Lyra realized that the adventures ahead would challenge Ethan in even greater ways. But she also knew that with him by her side, Luminara and perhaps the galaxy would find solutions, harmony, and inspiration in ways no one had imagined. The skies above Luminara were unusually dark that morning, clouds swirling with an eerie silver glow. Queen Lyra stood on her palace balcony, observing the city below. Floating gardens hovered gracefully, yet there was a tense energy in the air. Reports had arrived from a distant galaxy. A newly discovered celestial anomaly threatened to disrupt the communication and energy networks of multiple allied worlds. Lyra turned to Ethan, who was calmly studying a holographic projection of the anomaly. "This is bigger than anything we have faced before," she said softly. "It could affect millions, not just Luminara." Ethan nodded, his expression focused but serene. "Then we will face it together," he said simply. Lyra admired his calm. Even in the face of a massive, complex challenge, he did not panic. His quiet confidence reassured everyone around him. The council of alien leaders gathered urgently in Luminara's main hall. Scientists, engineers, and diplomats presented data on the anomaly. Its energy waves were unpredictable, interfering with satellites, power grids, and interplanetary communication systems. Every solution proposed seemed to have a flaw. The delegates argued, frustration growing with every passing minute. Ethan observed quietly, asking precise questions, taking careful notes, and drawing connections between data points that others had missed. "The anomaly's waves are not entirely random," he said finally. "They follow a pattern, but the timing is irregular. If we synchronize our grids and use adaptive transmission points, we can neutralize the disruption without shutting systems down." A murmur spread through the council. "It is unconventional," one alien said. "But it could work." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes unconventional is the only solution." The team moved swiftly under his guidance. Ethan coordinated efforts across multiple planets, instructing engineers how to modify energy grids and satellites to adapt to the anomaly's fluctuations. He explained in simple terms, making complex systems understandable to everyone. Citizens on Luminara and neighboring planets watched as technicians implemented the plan, amazed at how calmly and efficiently the human guided them. Hours passed. The anomaly's energy waves rippled unpredictably through space, yet Ethan's plan held. The adaptive grids adjusted, satellites stabilized, and communication lines remained intact. Slowly, the danger began to subside. Lyra watched the unfolding events with awe. She had seen him handle palace crises, festivals, and diplomatic challenges, but this was on a galactic scale. His intelligence, observation, and humility had prevented widespread disruption. Citizens cheered as news of success spread. Alien delegates bowed in respect. "You have done what no one else could," Lyra whispered as she approached him. "You have protected not just our planet, but countless others. You remain humble, yet your actions are heroic." Ethan shook his head lightly. "I only noticed the problem, thought of a solution, and acted. That is all I can do," Lyra smiled. "It is never all. You have shown that true greatness comes from understanding action and care for others. That is a lesson the galaxy will not forget." Later that day, the council held a ceremony to honor the efforts of all involved. Delegates praised Ethan not for his rank or title, but for his insight, guidance, and quiet heroism. Lyra stood beside him, proud beyond words. She realized that their partnership was more than marriage. It was a collaboration of minds and hearts, built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. After the ceremony, the Queen and her husband walked through the palace gardens. The alien flowers glowed softly, reflecting in the calm pools below. Citizens waved and smiled as they passed, grateful for the human who had helped protect them all. "You have changed the way the galaxy sees humans," Lyra said softly. "I thought I knew what you were capable of, but you continually surprise me. You are clever, calm, and extraordinary." Ethan looked at her, eyes gentle. "I do not seek praise. I only try to notice what needs doing and act. That is enough for me." Lyra shook her head, smiling. "It is never enough because what you do is extraordinary. Your quiet brilliance inspires, guides, and protects. That is the mark of true strength." Days passed and life in Luminara returned to its peaceful rhythm. Citizens continued their work. Diplomats learned from Ethan's methods, and technicians applied his solutions to new challenges. Yet even in calm times, Lyra knew that larger adventures awaited. She had learned that with him by her side, any problem, no matter how complex, could be solved with insight, patience, and cooperation. One morning, Lyra called Ethan to her study. "I want to show you something," she said. She handed him a small device, a holographic recorder containing messages from citizens across multiple planets. Each one thanked him for his guidance, wisdom, and help. Children had drawn pictures of him solving problems, while adults praised his ingenuity and humility. Ethan's eyes softened as he watched the messages. "I did not expect this," he said quietly. "I only did what seemed right at the time." Lyra smiled. "And that is why it is extraordinary. You did not seek recognition, yet you changed lives, inspired people, and helped the galaxy see the value of human insight." That evening, the Queen and her husband walked to the palace balcony. The twin moons reflected on the calm waters of the floating gardens below. Citizens moved quietly through the streets, life continuing in harmony. "You have shown me the true strength of humans," Lyra said. "I married a humble man expecting simplicity. Instead, I found wisdom, courage, and brilliance beyond what I imagined." Ethan smiled softly. "I am still humble. I only act when I see what is needed. That is all." Lyra took his hand. "It is never all, Ethan. It is more than enough. You have shown that intelligence, humility, and care can change worlds. That is true heroism." The next weeks were filled with quiet moments of learning and exploration. Ethan continued to guide the palace staff, diplomats, and citizens. His methods spread to neighboring worlds, teaching aliens that observation, patience, and ingenuity were as valuable as advanced technology or brute strength. Lyra observed him closely. She realized that their partnership was a balance of trust, understanding, and shared goals. He complimented her in every way, his calm insight balancing her wisdom and authority. Together, they could face any challenge. One afternoon, a minor crisis arose. A malfunction in the palace's central energy hub threatened the floating gardens. Technicians panicked, but Ethan approached calmly, analyzing the issue. Within minutes, he stabilized the hub, ensuring the gardens floated safely and gracefully. Citizens watching cheered, not just for the solution, but for the quiet confidence that guided it. Lyra smiled, knowing she had witnessed something remarkable. Humans, she realized, were capable of extraordinary achievements through observation, insight, and action, and Ethan embodied that completely. As night fell, the Queen and her husband returned to the palace balcony. The twin moons glowed softly, reflecting their shared journey. Lyra felt a deep sense of admiration and gratitude. She had married a humble man, but she had gained a partner whose quiet brilliance inspired nations, solved problems, and changed the galaxy's view of humanity. "You are extraordinary," she said softly. Ethan looked at her, gentle and humble. "I am only doing what I can. That is all I ever wanted." Lyra shook her head with a smile. "It is never all. You have shown me that greatness often comes quietly, in ways we do not expect, and that is the most remarkable lesson of all." The palace lights dimmed as the city slept below. Citizens dreamed peacefully, knowing that their leaders and a humble human had guided them through challenges, big and small. And so the human and the alien queen stood together under the twin moons, knowing that their partnership was more than marriage. It was a collaboration of minds, hearts, and purpose. The galaxy had seen the quiet heroism of humans through Ethan, and Lyra had learned that true strength could be gentle, humble, and brilliant all at once. With his calm mind and her wise leadership, Luminara and perhaps the galaxy would continue to thrive, inspired by the extraordinary potential of humanity. The story of the humble human and the alien queen was far from over. But one thing was certain. Greatness often came in unexpected forms, and sometimes the most unassuming people could achieve extraordinary things. Queen Lyra smiled at Ethan, knowing that she had married not just a human but a partner whose insight, humility, and brilliance would shape the galaxy for generations to come.